So my goal is, now that, like I said, not necessarily consensus, but at least a broad set of criteria for things that you might look for in student signature to work. And I would ask you individually to take this list and the list that list, shut up you, this list and any other things that you've thought of, and keep those in mind as we look at the work that the students are going to talk about today. Because really the main show is them. It's not me. It's not Kat. But I would like to present to you the framework that we have at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, a program called ICONS, which stands for Integrated Concentration in Science. It has a mission of producing the next generation of leaders in science and technology, but the important point is that they have the attitudes, knowledge, and skills necessary to succeed in solving the inherently multidisciplinary problems we face as a society. That's actually a big deal, and we heard in the keynote talk last night how important it is to have some sort of a distributed expertise work toward this. And if you think about it, the standard approach toward an interdisciplinary science major is the idea of having somebody who knows a little bit about everything, which leads to outcomes that are broad but necessarily shallow, and nobody's an expert in anything. And we took a different approach at UMass, where we invite multidisciplinary teams of students to focus on challenges, things that are relevant, things that are meaningful, things that are bigger and transcend any particular discipline, things like climate change, access to clean water, curing cancer, questions that are going to require input from scientists with diverse skills, knowledge, and tools in order to address them. And so by taking a microbiologist and a physicist and a computer science person and an environmental science person and putting them on a team and asking them questions about cholera in Haiti, the solutions that they're going to come up with and the things that they're going to learn in the process of understanding why that's a problem, what are the things that led it to be a problem, those are the skills that we need in the future generation of leaders. And so the program structure that we have is a 4-year sequence of courses that exist outside of any discipline. So students retain their disciplinary depth within a major. In the first year, they take a course where they work in teams on case studies drawn from current challenges. They take a second-year course focusing on communication in their theme area, biomedicine or renewable energy. They execute a team discovery laboratory course in their third year where students discover their own experimental designs, work towards a product that they've determined is interesting on their own, and culminate in an honors thesis in their senior year. Erin is going to speak next about her experiences, starting with her signature work in each of the different classes. In ICONS 1, the development of new case studies that actually demonstrate her understanding of the learning process, the communication products that bridge disciplines, the experiments that she and her teammates designed, and the senior research that she conducted.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Erin Amato. I'm currently a master's student here at UMass. During my undergrad, I was a microbiology major, and I was part of the ICONS first class that launched in fall of 2010, and I served on the biomedicine track. So to start with ICONS 1, there's a pedagogy that we use that simply describes the stages of learning, and we use these fundamentals of an integrated education through the model of these case studies. And the signature work that was produced involves this new case study design development, where we are taking this information, reapplying it, and we're the ones designing a case study for the new cohort of ICON students for the following year. So for me, my group chose to focus on nuclear energy and its role in energy consumption. So the first stage here is inception. So we wanted to look at how the human race consumes and uses energy is a ubiquitous problem and something that could be made more efficient. So here we explore the boundaries. We provided articles with results detailing how much energy is actually created from nuclear power plants, which led into the engagement stage here. So here we wanted to look at analyzing the effectiveness of nuclear power against other energy sources and discussing the validity of that, whether it's good or bad. This then led into the design portion, or research. So provide each team with the opportunity to find information that pertains to the safety and efficiency of nuclear energy. And if the team disagrees with this source of energy, then it's their job to come up with a method that generates the same amount, if not more, energy as nuclear power, and to defend that. So the goal is that each group will need to be able to digest this quantitative data in a way that will aid or supplement their create process, which is this next step. So this is creating that tangible product, so demonstrating whether they understand the safety implications from their primary research regarding nuclear power or nuclear energy, and looking at any negative effects that might ensue, and so that way they could be ramified. And the last step is therefore is reflect. So in this portion, so no longer are you in your teams of 4 or 5, you're in super teams where you're going to present the work that you worked through, justify it to your teams, and then critique one another. So that way you can take that information and remodel. So in icons, one of the documents that came out of this process was where we generated questions that we wanted the students to have at the forefront of their minds when they were reading this Inception material. So we came up with articles we wanted them to look at, and we wanted these questions to kind of better prepare them for their research and create steps. And what are produced from this signature work would be that next year students would be able to ask, and we could ask these questions and they could answer them in order to develop this case study in the first place. So that's why we went on and designed the questions and had to answer them ourselves first. So this led into Icons 2. So Icons 2 is what we call Communication Bootcamp. So we're looking at what is different with writing in science, what are the demands scientists face, especially when interacting with scientists from other disciplines, the public, and youth. And we wanted to also look at good and bad figures. What makes a figure good or bad? And we also want to learn how to provide constructive criticism to the work that we're provided with and develop the skills to create logical and articulate arguments. So with this, So with this, we worked in groups and chose a problem that we cared about and then came up with a proposal to combat this problem. So although this course was now in the biomedicine track, problems range from curing Alzheimer's to looking at decreasing salinity in water, and even looking at the foreseeable extinction of polar bears and climate change. So just to give you an example, my group looked at climate change. So I was in a group with there's 3 of us total, students from biochemistry, psychology, and I was microbiology. And we found current articles highlighting how temperatures in the Arctic were rising at a rate 2 times that of the average global temperature, which led into the carbon concentration in its increase. And so we wanted to come up with a way to combat that. So the skills in this work revolve around understanding the biochar initiative. So walking through an algorithm of how this initiative defined biochar and could potentially use it to sequester carbon in the future. So for me, I had no background in this. I had no I had no understanding of the engineering that was involved. But luckily, the biochemist, he was also a math minor and did some engineering courses as well. Don't ask me why, but he did. And I'm very grateful for that because he was able to teach me this aspect of the program. But then he also didn't understand some of the organismal aspect of that and how these model systems were being affected, which is where I came in, and then my friend Becca, another person in this, was the psychology aspect, and she looked at where could we take this in the future. And something else that kind of looks at this is just communicating this in a way that transcends past all of our majors. We're going to X out of... Oh.
Just close that.
Okay. In a way that we could communicate this well so everyone could understand what we were talking about. But what I also came in, I think, going into this, I was looking for one answer. And what I found was there's actually multiple solutions to this. It's not just biochar will reduce carbon. It's that you have to look at, it's not black and white, it's gray. And that's kind of what Icons shows you. Another example of what students did in the learning stage involved at looking at potential Alzheimer's therapy. So this was the following year, the next Icons 2 students. They were looking at halting the progression of the disease instead of just combating the cognitive effects. So they chose this potential therapy. They were various different understandings behind the disease, but they were looking at one in particular involving the tau protein gene and what they could do to turn this gene off that's told to be hyperphosphorylated in a way that they could generate the ability to halt the disease in general. And then in Icons 3, we're looking at this team-oriented discovery lab. So here we're learning how molecular genetics and bioinformatics are powerful approaches to investigating the mechanism of a gene's function. So we worked to design our own experimental design to investigate the mechanisms of this gene. And so in this course, we really went through how to effectively start from point A to get to point B, so we developed a PowerPoint, and I just pulled a few of those final slides to show you. So in Lab 1, we looked at the preparation of the genomic DNA. We then looked at connecting the letters on the paper with the DNA in the organism. So basically, we're running a bunch of different analyses to further understand the characterization of our gene, and then carry out experiments that could ultimately lead to finding out this experimental procedure to find out the function of our gene of interest. And the impact of this was that as a team, we discovered several possible roles that this gene could play in the physiology and expression during stress and mitochondrial perturbation. So what we carried away was not exactly all of the gene expression, but just the reliance on other data analysis. I know for myself, I didn't have the greatest background in all these bioinformatics, which was a heavy portion of this course. So it's something that I now feel very comfortable with, being able to work in teams with people from all different backgrounds to take this problem. And now in my research today, even if I don't have the tools to do exactly what I need to do, I know how to find them. And so this led to ICONS 4, so a culmination. This involved engaging in scientific research at UMass Amherst with faculty and laboratories, developing a capstone research project that identifies and fills a knowledge gap in our chosen theme area, and then crossing the disciplinary boundaries and building upon previous learning in our general education courses, our major courses, and ICONS 1 through 3 so far. And this finally led to creating new knowledge in the theme area. So the project itself is very important and led to my current graduate work, reasons why I stayed at UMass to finish this research, and it's currently going towards publication. But even more so, the experience, which I can show here, I don't believe we have sound, but you can get the idea, is that it amplifies.
Hi, my name is Erin Amato, and I currently work in Dr. Sue Lachey's lab in the
we
venue.
have sound. But essentially, the impact was we wanted to create a video to kind of to really showcase our work to the public. So to be able to communicate what we're doing in the lab with, it's our own project, but we are working with faculty and graduate students and at a higher engagement of thinking, and to be able to talk about this research to the general public in a way that shows that we're passionate about it, why we're passionate about it, our methods behind it, and what we hope this will achieve. And so the trajectory of these 4 years took me through the signature work, looking at nuclear energy, biochar impact on polar bear populations, and to the effect of spirochetes on the gut microbiome behavior, which is what I'm currently exploring. But in all of these problems, as part of the interdisciplinary team, I have discovered both how I can play a role in bridging that scientific research, clinical medicine, and business as a way, as well as competence, to really pursue a career that lets me work across these boundaries. And that's something that ICONS has done from the get-go. And something that I think really relates was Dr. Camacho's talk today. Her last takeaway point was that students are interested in something tangible. They're interested in something that they can relate to and build from that. And I really feel like that mirrors the ICONS program, because that's what we did starting at day one. When we walked into that class as a 17, 18-year-old student, being like, okay, it's up to you now. It's student-driven. We use things that we care about, and it's been a wonderful experience so far. So I'm grateful to have been a part of it.
Thank you.
I'm going to close this down and invite Kat, Catherine, and Vanessa to proceed with their story.
University of Laverne.
Oh, from the University of Laverne. I've lost your talk, though. I think it's this one. Okay. I'll start for you. Would you like the remote?
Well, thank you, Justin and Erin. That was a great story. My name's Kat, and I'm here with a sophomore biology major, Kimberly Pineda, and recent graduate, Vanessa Morales. We're going to talk a little bit about our biology department's signature work. So for us, the biology department's been doing undergraduate research projects with students for decades. And one of the things that the LEAP initiative has done for our department is we've started thinking about not just how do we teach students to do research, but how do we teach students to utilize their broad liberal arts education and communicate their science to a broader audience. So the things that we're going to talk about today are a focus on science inquiry, which is relevant to all of us, but also science literacy and writing, and how we can teach our students these skills that they need to be successful. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to talk a little bit about how we've scaffolded the integration of different assignments across the biology program from freshman to senior year, starting very literally the second week of class when we hand them a peer-reviewed published article and say, digest this. And walking them through that process and teaching them how to really read and to pull what they need from the material, and then giving them choice where they're going to develop grants on things that they're interested in, and starting that research process really early, and then ending with a faculty-student relationship and partnership on a research project. So this starts for us with scaffolded inquiry-based laboratories. So across our department, from the 101 lab manual for our non-majors biology through the majors biology, biostatistics, anatomy, cell biology, we have all developed ebooks for our students to really focus in on innovative laboratories to get students asking questions. And ebooks are really fun as a pitch to make those. They're fun to do, and I've done them with students, and they're great. And then one of the things that we noticed is that our students were getting to the thesis project and not completing on time. So basically what we would consider to be the ABD of our PhD work, they were, AB thesis, right? And so getting the students to start thinking about research earlier was one of our major missions. So we do this by introducing journal articles early, and we focus a lot on figures and teaching them how to write about science, and then we give them opportunities to peer critique each other so that it becomes a classroom discussion, and then we tell them the answer so that they're starting to build those skill sets. And then they do a grant of their choice, and Kim's going to talk about, as a current sophomore, she's going to talk about what that freshman year experience was like for her and the grant that her group came up with. The other piece of this scaffolded process happens in our junior to senior year series, and that's with a 4-course series. They're all under 2 units, but we have a class in research methods, biostatistics, and then 2 senior seminar courses. So we build skills in writing by having them, again, start with a grant. So it's a common assignment that goes from freshman to junior year. And then we also teach them some foundations in statistics, analysis, and then more writing. And they're just constantly writing until they get through that barrier of, I don't like to write, which they, 70%, when you survey them at the beginning of the semester, 70 or 80% of the science students say, I became a scientist so I didn't have to write. And so getting them over that hump and getting them to really feel comfortable communicating science has been a big role. And the other thing that I've seen, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kim, is that not only are they learning to communicate science to each other and their peers, but they're also learning to communicate it to their families at home. We are a Hispanic serving institution in Southern California. We have 60% first generation, 76% minority, 48% Hispanic, Latino. And our students, by and large, are coming in without a background or foundation from their family. So being able to go back to their communities and communicate their science has been a huge goal for us. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim, who's going to talk about her experience at the freshman level.
So I'm going to be giving the student's perspective on the General Biology 201 freshman course. And I'm going to be focusing on 2 key concepts that we had in coursework. One is the journal article, and the second is the grant proposal, both of which highlight foundational skills that we as students were reinforced throughout the curriculum, but also we were able to build on these skills and utilize them throughout our academic career as biology majors. So with the journal articles, one of the greatest things that I got from that is the exposure to primary literature. So the transition from high school to a collegiate level, I didn't have any prior knowledge on what research was or how it entailed in the scientific community. So coming in and reading these articles was really difficult for me because they use a lot of really big words that I had no idea what they meant, and they had all these methods that were so foreign I didn't think they actually existed. And so after reading it and forcing myself to do these summaries, so really reading it over and over again, to breaking it down and understanding the concepts, I was able to grasp a better knowledge on what exactly what research does and what exactly is being looked at in the scientific community. So all these big words, I had no idea what they meant. I now am able to apply it in my vocabulary when I do lab write-ups, when I do lab work. And these methods that seem foreign to me are now things that I do in lab, and I have an understanding of what I'm doing and what I'm looking for. Additionally, it actually helped my writing skills a lot. I come from high school where our writing skills are really basic and simple to a college level in biology where we're expected to write everything up to par with the particular terminology that's used. So now having these skills, my writing was refined, and having my peers actually critique me gave me a better sense of what I should be looking at and what my mistakes were, and kind of internalizing what I should be talking about rather than just, writing stuff down like I did in high school. So from that, going to the grant proposal, we were given a theme, and that was overpopulation. And that was a really big, wide topic that I had no idea what to do with. And so I was trying to think to myself, how can I come up with a topic that is so broad, but yet encloses everything that we've learned from the course so far? So in the general biology course, we focus on 3 main themes throughout the class, and that was ecology, animal, and cell/molecular. So I thought about it this way. I took the big concept of ecology and I applied it to the theme. So overpopulation. I kind of found conservation the biggest thing that kind of stood out to me in that course, and I took that. And then when I took animal, I kind of built on that, and I thought, well, let's do some research and let's see what animals or what's being implemented, in research so far. What are people looking at? What can I look at, and what can I use to build my own ideas? And so after countless amounts of research, I had an idea, and I picked the southern white rhino. I'm going to give you a little picture. That's my project. And so when I went to molecular and cell, I was like, okay, this is a lot more focused. How can I combine all this together in one giant focused project, but it has each piece of this? So I did some more research. And those articles that used to be scary were actually really, really helpful. And they brought me a more understanding of what exactly is being looked like. So at the cellular level, I found that my interest was in the hormone levels. So with the southern white rhinos, they have a really low birth rate. And that kind of stood out to me, like, why is there such a disparity between birth rate and death rate and what's going on? So I looked specifically at hormones and how maybe that would help increase the population, and maybe that would fix my conservation issue, and everything would come together in one giant topic. And so it took me a while to get through this, but me and my group did a really good job, and we sort of went through this step by step, of course with the help of our professors, and we were able to put together this topic where we discussed hormone levels and how we can hopefully increase reproduction. So the great thing about this grant, and going back to this one, that I really liked was that it was a personal thing to me. Doing this project wasn't something that was given to me and I had to read some lines and read off my note cards. It was something where I put effort and time and research into it. So when I presented it, it was really close to my heart and what I was doing, and I understood everything that was going on, and I was proud to present these to my professors and to my peers. So this leads up to oral presentation skills. So presenting was never my biggest forte. When I came in high school, I was actually really afraid to present. So when doing this, I was actually really, really nervous. But the fact that I knew what I was talking about, the fact that I was really able to know what I researched, to love what I was doing, and to really be passionate about what I was looking at, it was easier for me to tell my peers and my professors what I learned. I was proud of it, and so I loved presenting it. And so I took those skills, my ability to speak, and gave me a little bit more confidence, and I took a science communication class in the January term. And that was debate, but with scientific topics. And so I was interested because, science, I should know more, and it did require research. And the good thing about that was I already had prior knowledge on how to read these research. I knew what they were talking about, and I had a better understanding. So when I took this class, I ended up at the top of it, and I was able to go to a tournament in DC and Alaska, which actually was nationals. And surprisingly, we broke, me and my partner, and we went to semifinals as speakers, and that was actually really cool because freshmen usually don't make it that far after your second or first tournament. So we made semifinals, and we finished on top, and we got a really nice looking plaque, really cool. Yeah, I'm proud of that. And also, as I continue presenting, I'm actually at the top of my presenting of my class when it comes to presenting, which I think is really awesome. You know, I came from being really scared to like presenting here right now to you guys. So all in all, these skills that were gathered from research, from presenting, are things that I still utilize today. I'm still part of the debate team, I'm still doing lab work, and I still present in front of my peers and professors in areas that are more complex, in topics that are more focused. And I'm able to do that because now I know what exactly I'm looking at, I know how to read it, and I know how to apply it. And so that was kind of what I grasped from this in my freshman year and really helped me to grow as a student and as a future biology participant in the field. So I'm going to pass it on to Vanessa, who's going to go a little more in depth as to how this was done for her in particular.
Thanks, Kim. Kim was able to discuss her experience coming out of freshman year and leading into their sophomore year, and I wanted to share with you today my experience coming from sophomore into my senior year. More importantly, the courses that stood out to me and that impacted me in preparing me for higher level research and to approaching a senior capstone project and how to be successful in that. For starters, sophomore year, I took cell biology, and it was the start of design your own experiments. So this idea of developing a project, brainstorming on what question you want to propose, what's the proper methodology to actually addressing your question. So it was here by choice that I was able to construct from the foundation a project that was all my own, and the methodology to actually go about and see it to completion. Junior year, I took evolution and biosystematics. And learning the content, the theory, I was able to integrate at this time kind of the biological applications behind this. And this class was especially meaningful for me given what I was going to later work on for my senior capstone. So I was able to kind of tie in course material that was pulled from that class and relate it back to my actual senior project. Continuing on into my junior year, research methods and biosystematics was another course that was required by juniors and that I took, and it was here that I got a strong foundation for just different stats, the different applications, so understanding what type of stats would you run as well as how to do it and why would you run this particular statistical analysis. So it was here that I got a strong foundation on the statistical applications, and I got introduced to peer critiquing. So this was really interesting in that, you know, going through the undergraduate program with the same group of people, we started to really rely on one another in critiquing each other's work and relying on one another to give constructive criticism just on the experimental design of our different projects, on the writing process. And it was at this time that we all, you know, individually started talking to mentors and started taking interest to what everyone was doing in terms of the faculty. Leading into senior year, I took senior seminar writing, and the writing portion was to help us continue on through completion. So after having done the introduction in research methods and biostats, leading into senior year, we were able to continue on the writing process and developing the methodology, the results, as well as the discussion. And then here we also continue to peer critique each other's work and give each other constructive criticism. To give you a better idea of what I did on my senior project, I first went around, just, you know, talked to different faculty members, took an interest to talk to them and see what everyone was doing. And I had the opportunity to sit down with Kat Weaver and get a better idea of what she did. And her area of interest was molecular work and on this genus of Oreohelix, which is a land snail. So I took strong interest in this, and I decided this is what I want to do. So we developed this project together, and it focused on the biogeography of Oreohelix in Central Washington. I had the coolest experience traveling up to Central Washington, doing a sampling of different populations and bringing them back to ULV to do a comprehensive molecular analysis on them. You know, again, tying in what I learned in my undergraduate studies, so the experimental design, so I had to strategically plan out. We were there in Washington for 1 week. I had to map out what was the best way to optimize my time here. And so I was able to pull from courses just on the development of my project and how to actually carry it out. From this study, we were actually able to determine that these species are actually endemic to Central Washington, and we were able to describe 13 new species there. Having such a strong passion in my particular senior capstone, I was able to actually take it a step further. So I was able to submit it for formal review. And some of the editor's comments said, you know, we appreciate the fact that this is a comprehensive study. However, we recommend that you add an additional component to this, and that's radula. So on top of looking at molecular, on top of looking at shell morphology and repro, they suggested that we look at radula, which is this tongue-like feature that snails have. And the literature does support that you can distinguish between separate species describing the radula. This alone is a project, and is actually serving as a project now for a senior in the biology department, Robert Candelaria. So he's currently working on this. And so I'm now co-advising him to complete his senior project, and will actually lead to kind of the completion of a bigger manuscript. Overall, just through the undergraduate studies, through my undergraduate research, I've greatly improved on my critical skills, my analytical skills that not only help me in a laboratory setting, not only help me in my undergraduate studies, but I feel are transferable to other disciplines as well. And overall, just help me be better prepared for higher level research. Now today, as a post-baccalaureate for the biology department, you know, I had the opportunity, I was initially interested in going into veterinarian medicine, but because of all my research and my strong foundation in research, I had such a passion for it that I decided that was my area of interest. This is what I wanted to do with my career. So I continue to train undergraduates going through the program, doing their undergraduate study. I continue to train them on molecular work and giving them those foundations so that they themselves can complete their senior project. I continue to help out with research methods and biostats. And, you know, as Kat mentioned to you earlier, the development of ebooks. And so I co-wrote this ebook that now serves as the content material in biostats and research methods. And it's been adopted through the biology department as well as other different departments at the university. And this is an introduction to statistical analysis and research. So on top of that, you know, with helping train undergraduates, with helping develop the content material, new faculty members that are teaching these courses, I'm able to help train them as well. So that's kind of nice, you know, working closely with students, working closely with faculty members, just kind of builds this unity within the department. And just overall, I enjoy it. I enjoy working with faculty, I enjoy working with students, so I've had a lovely experience overall.
I just wanted to say that we have some handouts on your table. So the 3 assignments that we do, the journal article, the grant writing, and the senior project, the descriptions are there, as well as the rubric that we use for the senior research, which is a kind of borrowed and slightly changed from AAC&U values, scientific inquiry and analysis, and or the inquiry and analysis and writing rubric. So, you know, feel free to steal whatever you want.
And as you steal, I'm going to actually give you another assignment. We've heard a lot of stories, inspirational stories from students, from former students, about the work that they've done, the excitement that it inspired, and the gains that they've experienced through that have led to further success in their academics or their careers and in different ways. I began this by asking you, what do you expect to see as indicators of excellence, and what are the things that make something a signature work? And I'd like to just revisit that question, but with a slightly different context to it. All of the work that's been described has been done within the scaffolding provided by 2 initiatives, the ICONS program at UMass and the structural program at Laverne. I would ask you to consider at your tables for the next 2 or 3 minutes and discuss. Are there similarities between those two initiatives in terms of the way that challenges are provided to students, the way that students rise to meet those challenges, and the learning gains that the students experience in rising to those challenges? Are there similarities? If so, what are they? Are there differences, and are the differences institution-specific? And feel free to bring in your experiences that you have from your own home institutions or places that you've also had experience with in answering those questions. Have I been clear? Ready, go.
So you'll pull them together and then we'll transition to the next.
They're going to do this in the breakout, and then
Well, we could do that, and then I could say, now you're going to do them. Unless you think that there's something you can lift up right away. Because I kind of like it.
That we can pull in that are
That might
universal
help
truths
them.
that would frame the next discussion.
I think that would be good. Yeah, there were some that jumped out at me, and this is relatively new to me.
Yeah.
But the peer mentoring part of it was really quite astonishing.
Yeah.
And the self-authorship that developed was, you need to know that's something you want to do. And I'm not sure everybody does.
awesome?
That's just one.
Thank you.
That's great.
Did you take some with your iPhone?
I missed some of
My mom has that
stuff.
same
That's okay.
camera in it. I have,
All the major points.
but I figured,
Well, and I felt I did.
You probably
I think
have
your
those
iPhone 6
words,
might be the best way.
Yes.
but you communicated the nut of everything that you
Okay, good.
Oh, yeah.
experienced, and you
Oh,
Okay,
attempted.
because I felt like I didn't know. Okay.
Well, you never can like your own speech.
Yeah, I know. I
Do you
know.
want to take one with one of
Yeah.
our phones?
There's
too?
always something you could have done better, but it came across really well.
Great, thank you.
All three.
It's funny how there was
Will you take one with Kim's phone too?
expecting nothing to happen.
What?
The video, I was expecting nothing to happen. It was good, and I realized
Yes.
whatever they laughed, it was fine.
Some of them are good though.
Well,
Even ask you to take a picture after if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I mean, one of the outcomes from these sorts of experiences,
Aaron.
confidence and
Oh yeah, we have a picture of you too.
Okay, I mean, that's one of the
Oh
things
my
that
gosh,
happens
thank you. My
when
mom
you
would love that. My professor would love that. She was like
their
that.
own work, because that's the only way forward.
Yep.
And so you exhibited that. So poise is one of the things, one of the outcomes from this.
Do you
And
want
the
to
fact
take a
that
picture
you
of them and then you can say,
expect that to happen, being and move on and not have flustered by that poise and confidence is a learning outcome. And it makes you a better communicator.
That one's good.
And it makes you a better scientist.
Do you want to take a picture of them as well?
sure.
Oh my god, do you mind?
We could go out.
Do you mind taking a picture of them? Then we can text it to you.
Oh my god, you're amazing.
We're in a picture.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Let's get that out.
There's got to be a couple in here. So, does your computer have a card thing?
Fabulous. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Get it off here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Sue will want that. She was asking
Yes, she
for
will.
pictures for stuff. I was like, I don't have any.
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out. I think you have to plug it in. There's no card. So Melanie will have to email it to us. But we have some on the phone. Yeah. Do you mind? I'll grab it from you after. Thanks. So make sure Melanie sets it up on Dropbox or emails it to us. Okay. Well, probably Dropbox would be easier.
Alright, I'll let her know.
We can add her to our Dropbox.
Yeah, that was really a good idea to do that first.
So take me to the
Scaffold.
Yeah. And I'll send it to you. Yeah.
They're supposed to be thinking about what they can go home and do on weekends based on.
What do we say to them when we go?
Well, they're going to ask you questions. That's what's going to happen. But the thing you could say is, what can I do to help you think about how you could go home?
Okay.
really what I was
It's actually pretty lively out there.
Yes,
And I
they're
don't want
doing
to
well.
interrupt a good discussion.
Yep.
We should give her phone number too.
Yeah, some of that.
I don't know, just have a dinner.
Yes, 4:13 at home.
Is that crazy?
I know.
Actually, you know what I'm going to do? You want some coffee? I'm going to go to the table and get a cup of coffee. Yes?
Oh, I would too.
All right.
No, just black.
Just black is fine.
Yes.
What do you want in it?
Black's fine.
Everybody coffee. A little bit of everything. A little bit of everything. Do you want coffee?
Awesome.
So, Vanessa's high. She's high. Kim is. That speech class really helped. It's interesting because we started at the sophomore year and went up, and then we were like, it's not working, so we have to start earlier. And our retention rates have stabilized from freshman to sophomore year. Now, they still drop off. They do. But, I mean, I
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Can't do this at home, but I can do it here. I drink coffee at this time of the afternoon at home in Washington. I'd be up all night.
like, are you the high
It helps here.
or middle end? Like, of our program.
Okay,
Did I
ready?
bring my very, very, very best student?
All right, let's come back together for a second.
That's how good it became,
And let's do the same thing we did before. Perhaps you found some similarities, perhaps you found some differences, perhaps you found some things, some characteristics of the students themselves, things that they displayed as they were telling their stories. And I'd like to just ask for you to volunteer to me anything that you see that might be a characteristic of a program or an initiative that generates quality signature work from students. Okay, so that it's not a course, that it's actually an integrated curriculum. So that it's actually built into a sequence of things that's just more than here's your course in integrated learning and now you're done, move on. Got it. Let me know if I paraphrase incorrectly. Okay. Well, hey, I'm happy to ask the people up here to make up stuff. Yep.
Yes.
No.
So for the freshman year, it's General Biology 1. Across 4 sections, 160, but we break them up. So 40, 40, 40, 40.
And in our program, we have an application process in the fall where we invite 60 students out of the entire UMass population to be part of our program. Let me just transmit that question so everybody can hear it. The question was at Laverne, what happens when a student wants to be a biology major but starts late?
So we have a late track. So a lot of times if students can take the general biology 1 class, they can. We have a Laverne Experience curriculum where we have all the freshmen as part of a learning community. So transfer students or students that start into bio late will actually take plant and animal biology, and then they pick up this program in the sophomore year or that next course. We're working on getting that into those transfer courses as well. But I'll say, even though it's an integrated curriculum, we built it 1 course at a time. And it's Christine, who started this with the sophomore level course, started it back in 2006 or 7. And we just add a course or 2 courses every year until we got something that's kind of starting to work for us.
So I'm going to actually capture those last few questions, that there are multiple pathways open to students. We will allow freshmen and sophomores into ours, and we'll allow some overlap with things like that. So there is a pathway to finish for people who decide they want to start late.
We had a question that came up at our table during the discussion.
Yes.
So you said you invite people to join the ICONS program.
Yes.
How do you select those students?
We have an application process that's based on actually a series of questions or answers to 3 essay type questions. Do you want to speak to the application process? Do you remember it?
Yes. So essentially, you answer the question, give a societal problem that you're passionate about. And I think I wrote about stem cells or something like that. And then there's another question saying, like, why would you be a good fit for ICONS? And then I think there's a third question about how could ICONS prepare you for the future, for whatever you want to do, and why? And they're about 250-word questions.
So what we're looking for is a fit in terms of the students' ambitions and motivation and the opportunities that the program's going to provide. So, like, we're not looking for the high SAT scores. We're looking for a diverse cohort of students that together will have the skills that are necessary to solve these problems, rather than looking for really high achievers in any one discipline. Does that answer your question? But let me actually capture that question as a feature here. I can say that it's true for ours. Would you say that, like, diversity of student
Ideas and
backgrounds
thoughts,
ideas?
yeah.
So it hinges on diversity. It's a hinge. Okay. Other thought? Yes.
Just that both shared a real focus on communication skills, written, oral, scientists communicating to public, really impressive preparation to build those skills.
Okay. Excellent. So that's a common feature. Absolutely.
We get questions about content. And, we're dealing with issues where we have politicians who don't think global warming is happening, even though the majority of scientists are in agreement. So that content versus process, that where's the T for the content, so that the students are gaining in-depth knowledge about the content.
Okay. So that's a concern about the viability or the useful utility of programs like this. And maybe you guys can speak to that first, and I can answer that for ICONS as well.
Do you want to take?
So our journal article summaries, or the grants, are infused across the content. So one of the things the students have to do as part of the grant analysis is take what they're learning from the more traditional lecture parts and apply that into their ideas and topics. And the journal articles that they're reading are connected to the content. So we, at least in the freshman level, have tried to fuse the two together, and we use lab for our, as a space to create more time for that. I have found that when students understand the content better, because they involve and process, memorization of content becomes less of an issue. does that answer your?
Yeah, I guess we were thinking about the example from Amherst where the projects were about nuclear power, polar bears.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. So I'll just say, in their major. Period. End of discussion. No, seriously. So the reason why we made the ICONS program is we realized we were graduating majors in STEM disciplines that lacked certain skills. And so rather than fuse the teaching of those skills into every major and rebuild the entire curriculum, so screw that, let's just make something that exists outside of a major. So students still have a major, and they gain all of the disciplinary depth that they ever used to. But now they gain this experience in the other skills and growth areas that we identified as lacking in a traditional disciplinary major. Does that answer your question? Okay, I'll take one more thought about either the commonalities or differences between these two, and then we'd like to pivot to the final part of this discussion. Go ahead. Well, why don't you go ahead and answer that while I finish typing? So what happens when students choose topics outside of faculty expertise?
So for us, our senior research projects, students choose a faculty member and then they negotiate together on, but I think your question is probably more for them, right? So I won't do research with students that's totally outside of my, what Dr. Camacho talked about today, where she's like, I'll learn it. I don't have time to learn everything. And time is limited. So I say, when a student comes to talk to me about research, I have the 3 things I want to work on that year in my head. And I'm like, you can do this or this or this. And if they don't like any of those, then they tell me what they do like and I suggest someone else. And so we, as a department, have shared that burden and excitement of working with students and dividing them up in ways that make sense for them. So the students choose us, and it becomes a partnership. And I find that to be really beneficial for both of us because we're both coming to the table with something to offer.
And so maybe Erin can answer that from what happened in ICONS when you were working on a project that your instructors knew nothing about.
Yeah, so
happens all the time.
Polar bear project, my professors at the time in ICONS too were biochemists by training. So I remember, I think we talked to them and then we also talked to some of the ICONS 1 faculty, and they were basically like, this is a great idea. Now, I think you should find someone with more expertise. And so we started looking at faculty on campus, and we were going to explore outside of campus at different companies and things like that, because that was some of the ICONS-esque training, was to look outside of your comfort zone. So for us, there was one professor, I think his name was Dr. Raymond Bradley, who studied climate change extensively and looked at different populations. I think he may have glanced at polar bears, but it wasn't a huge, attribution to his work, but we set up a meeting with him, and I remember he was kind of surprised that we were coming to ask him about this project, but really engaged at the same time, because we were 3 students that were not in geology or geosciences, which was his field, and he particularly looked at climate change, and so we went to his office, and he goes, okay, well, what are you thinking? And we kind of laid everything out, and then we had a 2-hour discussion back and forth, and he really filled in the blanks on any of the content questions that we had, and then directed us to different articles, and even his other colleagues that could answer more focused questions. So ours was a lot more outside of our own knowledge, but then we could draw from what our training was and kind of fill in the gaps there.
I'll add one more thought to that being an instructor in a course that has these sorts of objectives to it, where it is entirely student-driven stuff, can be both immensely scary, because you don't know what they're going to do. And they're going to take it in directions that you didn't expect, and you're unprepared to help them with. but then liberating because it becomes their responsibility to find the resources and the expertise that they need. And if you have a follow-up on that, please, but then we need to move on to the next part.
And let me just add one more thought. I think one of the tensions here is how you handle the risk-taking with content coverage, always a traditional emphasis. But does content coverage stay the same in a world in which scientific knowledge is exploding? I mean, how do you even decide what the content is? And so the content process question necessarily changes, I would suggest. We were hoping to give you, and we still have, about 15 minutes left. And what we would like to do is to have the panelists go out and walk around the audience, and you continue your discussion at the table, thinking about ways that you can take home ideas that you've learned here. We'll do that for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have just a little bit of wrap-up. I think I might see a hand back there. I'll take your hand, yes.
We have an attrition rate that's or a retention rate rather, that's somewhere in the 60 to 70% range. Partly that's driven, the people that we lose is driven by scheduling stuff, so people who realize that they've bitten off more than they can chew and that they decide that they want to pursue something else. There's a portion of that that's students who discover through the sort of the emphasis on team-based learning and the way that you have to work with a diverse group of students, that's actually not right for them. And I consider that a positive outcome for the program, is people who learn that this style of work in sort of a modern scientific endeavor isn't right for them. And, good for you. Now you get a chance to go off and do what you want to do. But those are the main two categories. Can you think of anybody else who left the program for another reason? No. Yeah. So that's pretty much it.
For us, the fall to fall, freshman and sophomore retention is 60%, so we're losing 40%, and which is fairly, probably typical of most programs in here. And then it continues. It drops to senior year. One of the things that I think that we have shown, which gets at your diversity question, is that the retention is of the entering class to the graduating class, the diversity is the same. So for Laverne, that's a little biased, though, because we're 76% minority. We have a lot of Latinas that come into the biology program. One of the focuses that we have university-wide is keeping Latino males, because we're losing them university-wide. So we have a Metacolor initiative on campus where we're actually focusing on African American and Latino males, and coming up with programs and retention strategies for those populations, which we're also adopting in the biology department. But as a department, we do great with Latinas, and there's always places to improve, right? I mean, if we stop trying to improve in bridging this achievement gap, then we're all lost.
And I think we should keep the bar high on that diversity question. I think you said if we really are serious about inclusive excellence, and that is AAC&U's mission, and the LEAP challenge is saying all means all students need experiences like this. They may not all come through STEM. So maybe you need to think beyond your STEM departments when you're planning institution-wide for student success that's responsive to the multiple identities of your students in your own cultural context, but still hold that as an ideal. I think we have to do that. It's absolutely the right thing to do. So why don't we take a few more minutes? We've lost some people, but some of you, I think, still would like to talk together about what you can bring home from this. And take a few more minutes to do that. I'll reconvene us just at 1:40, just to see if you have final takeaways from the conversation. There are questions on your table, and the students and faculty here will circulate to answer your questions, and then I'll bring you back at the end. So have some more conversation. Okay, how about if we just come back together for a couple of minutes? Just a brief wrap up, and I also in a second want to thank the wonderful students. But I imagine that some of you are saying, this is hard. You know, how are we going to do it? And I think it's important to keep that question in mind. I had one small insight when the students were telling their stories, that there was a connection that I could see between the way the curriculum, the shared curriculum, was scaffolded quite intentionally. Not just my course, but our curriculum, and that structure and the increasing growth of poise and self-confidence and self-authorship of the students. And you won't really know if you can do that until you try it. I think you've got to think about making that, the human, the heart side, the confidence side, the self-authorship, together with a structure that empowers. And it seemed to me that that's what we were seeing, and that could be possible at any type of institution, and I would even go so far to say any student. They may not all be in STEM, but any student. Final thoughts from any of you? Did anybody else have an aha that you want to share at the end? That was truly mine. It really moved me, and I will not forget it. Any other thought that somebody would like to share before? Kim, you're being called on. How do you teach your family about it? That kind of outreach. Yes, I heard a student say once, an engineering student, the best thing I ever did was go to a middle school and explain why the building doesn't fall down on your head. It was a wonderful moment. That was a student at Chico State in California. Yeah, really good. Other insights that anybody would like to share? We do hope that you will go home with some inspiration here. And I want to start by thanking the students who have disappeared into the crowd. Kim, we have here, Vanessa and Aaron, stand up. And the faculty members, Kat and Justin, wherever the heck you went. Yes. And thank you for being such an engaged audience. We hope that you'll enjoy the rest of the sessions this afternoon. Thank you very much.